Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff, Mosher, and Adam Caplan. Eagles training camp right around the corner. Hey, that means, Adam, we're going to be transitioning pretty soon, and I won't tell people what pod it is, but pretty soon we're going to turn the page from season 5 of Inside the Birds to season 6.
Yeah, this season
Season of Inside the Birds.
Man, time has flown. I mean, I remember. So we started the year after the Eagles won the Super Bowl, 2018, and Wentz broke his back that season. Still played fairly well. There were some good stories, but this is when the injuries though started to pile up. And yeah, that's when we started. We talked about Isaac Seumalo that year. He was sort of our breakout player from what we had heard, and that was when he really started his really good play. I just remember that season. There was so much going on. You flip on right, left. There were a lot of things going on. Then over the time, we had all those. We talked to a lot of agents over that time, talking about how the Eagles medical department had to do the players right, do a better job, and all this. Well, the Eagles took care of that. They revamped their medical staff.
Yeah. Then
Peterson went through his situation. He got canned. All sorts of issues. We've been through a lot on this show over the years.
Oh my God. We have been through a lot. It's been great. Really enjoying it. It's so fun. That's the one thing about this that we can you and I we have a freaking blast doing this show. So really awesome. Looking forward to, and by the way, on that note, June has become, and the first week of July, difficult because of the way the OTAs are structured now, and there's really not much. But the way we did that contract series and then right into the NFC East preview with Greg Cosell, just thought it was really good for our platform, for our listeners. We got great feedback, and to be able to kind of then bridge that with what we're going to do in this podcast and a little bit the next podcast too, which is really get into the nuts and bolts of what are the questions facing the Eagles going into training camp, and then bam, training camp will start. We'll have intel. Going to do our best. There are two joint practices that not two practice. There's one with the Colts, but 2 rounds of them right here in Philly. You'll probably be at the one that's on the road, I assume, correct?
No, they're both here.
Oh, right. I kept thinking there were 3. No, there's just 2, right?
They're both going to be here.
Yeah.
Cleveland, remember we were in Berea last year. I was there for 2 days. That was really telling, by the way. I usually try not to make bold statements or don't overdo it, because I've learned my lesson from seeing a team and thinking a team's great and they wound up sucking. But I just remember someone with the Browns said to me, I ran into Mark Trestman, who did our Patreon.
Yeah.
Mark was blown away by the way Hurts looked, because he didn't have a great frame of reference. There wasn't a lot of tape on him. He thought Hurts looked great. I know someone with the Browns said, "Wow, this might be one of the best rosters in the NFL." And I was like, "Well, okay, all right. Mm-hmm. I mean, that means something. Okay, that's great." And I think you would agree, and our viewers listen know this because they watch intently. The Eagles had a great roster last season. The roster never looks the same; it looks different this year, in particular. A minimum of 7 new starters, but they're going to be good. But we've been blessed doing this show. Yes, 20 was dreadful. It was painful doing that year. Though we had some interesting information on Peterson and what was going on there behind the scenes. But 21, they shocked us in Sirianni's first year. That was really cool. And 22 was, okay, they lost the Super Bowl, but that was fun doing that show. Not that we were rooting, but it's always good when the team that you're covering on this show is good. It makes it a joy. And just to fast forward now, I love June and July. You know why? Because you're able to do things you normally wouldn't be able to get a chance to do. You could, like you said, the contract show. We didn't plan to do 4 contract shows. We didn't realize how many issues they were coming up with this team, because, as everybody knows, Eagles are kings of restructures.
Right.
And they have so many problems coming up in the future. They keep kicking the can down the road with these option bonuses. They function as really in-season signing bonuses. Okay, it keeps your team together for now, but at some point it's going to be a problem. And the craziness of, they didn't do a lot in free agency, but the craziness of the Slay situation, which did a 180 within 5 hours, and and the CJ Gardner-Johnson situation, his situation, their decision to offer him a deal, then he didn't like it, so they moved on, and then you fast forward to here, the contract series for doing those 4 shows, and then the Cosell shows. we've never seen comments so strong. We appreciate it. And I think you were alluding to this. We're just Eagle fans. Like the Giant fans are always out, the Commanders fans, and the Cowboy fans are like, hey, not an Eagles fan. I'm a Cowboy guy. This is the most comprehensive thing we've seen, and this includes Cowboys reporters. I'm like, thank you, great, it's good to know.
Yeah, like I said in the last show, it's kind of funny how many people, other fans of other NFC East teams, reach out and say this is the
Yeah.
most objective and fair and balanced, for being an Eagles podcast. And the weird thing is that's not new for us. We've done that with Greg for the last 2 or 3, maybe even 4 years now, and they're always like that. But people are just, it's great. People are catching on and seeing what we're doing and really enjoy that summer series. So it's past us now. We turn the page to training camp, and obviously we've got a lot of issues or questions, storylines really concerning the 2023 Eagles that we've been detailing on InsideTheBirds.com. Andrew DeCecco and I have been doing a series previewing the season, but you and I are going to get a little deeper into a lot of these storylines right here on this podcast, which of course Inside the Birds is powered by our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. It is the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. So we came up with a bunch of storylines we wanted to discuss as training camp nears. And by the way, camp begins officially, I believe the 25th is the report date, correct, Adam? That's not the first practice day?
No, the report date's the 25th, Tuesday.
Right. 25th is Tuesday.
Right.
So we'll have one more pod in between now and then, just to go through some more things that we hear.
Oh, our Monday show is going to be battles. Yeah, that the one that drops Monday at 6 Eastern. That'll be battles. Like this show that we're doing today is nothing like that. Though
Right.
we'll mention, hey, this battle's one to look for. It's more questions and issues. And as we went into the list to come up with this list, and I think you'd said this, I heard you on Football at 4 talk with Mike Geoff. I thought this is a great point.
Mm-hmm.
Competition is good. There's a lot of competition, and there are a lot of issues because when you have 7 new starters at a bare minimum, by the way, it could be more depending on how some of this competition goes, or if guys stay healthy or something happens, or if they bring other players in, by the way, they could, you never know. But particularly before the season starts, if things don't go well, which we've seen them do over the years with Darby and Gardner Johnson. So there are a lot of questions, like they're more than usual. And I don't think it's a bad thing because they're getting younger. They have some draft picks they want to see compete. I know from talking to the Eagles over the years, you've got the same information. They want to see these young guys on the field. Like, yeah, they might down the road, late August, early September, if it's not going well, bring veterans in, but they want to see these young kids compete.
Yeah, you know what? This year was was an off season, and this upcoming year is a year of what I call inevitability. Franchises, especially ones that are able to build themselves into Super Bowl contenders, it's the nature of the business. You can't keep a team that good together because you can't pay everybody in this salary cap league. So that's why the best teams over the last, I would say 15 to 20 years are able to compete, but turn the roster over so that they don't have valleys. And I'm talking about teams like the Ravens, the Steelers. I know the Steelers really haven't been great in the playoffs, but they've been in the playoffs. They haven't had a losing season in 20 some odd years, right? The Packers have been very good at that. Obviously, the Patriots were for a while because they had Tom Brady. But this is what the Eagles are now trying to be, the team that can turn over the roster but stay competitive. And, since that really down year of 2020, they're hoping to avoid that, even though they're turning over the roster this year and bringing in a lot of new players. And that's when you have a player like Jalen Hurts and you've got guys like Smith and A.J. Brown. You rely on your young talent, your nucleic talent to really carry you through when you have to turn the roster over. And there's no question defensively, the Eagles are for the most part turning over the roster. Yes, they brought some guys back, but what they got to do is rely on some kids that they've drafted to develop and take those spots. So that'll be a big kind of big topic going on, not just this year, but in years forward. If the Eagles stay competitive and not have one of those valley seasons that they've been known to have after hitting the peaks.
Yeah, it's set up pretty well with Devontae Smith, with their offensive line, Dickerson, Mailata, Juergens, Tyler Steen, defensively with Carter, with Jordan Davis, with Jacoby Dean. Reddick's probably going to be here a long time. Based on high character guys from the area. What a story. Nolan Smith, by the way. Now, obviously, they have some issues they need to figure out at corner what it's going to look like starting in 2025. That's when both veterans could very well be gone.
Mhm.
But the core of this roster is really good. Some are draftees, some are not. That's okay. Like one of the things the Eagles do that not all teams like doing is build through the draft and free agency. I know our friend Bill Pulling would tell us we need to get Bill on again soon. He felt like it's all draft with a couple guys like Adam Vinatieri, Burger McFarland, a couple guys over the years, but that's okay. Not one size doesn't fit all. This is one thing we've learned. You mentioned our 6 years.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, some of the missed draft picks were a problem that cost them. That's why they were so bad in 2020. In addition to the injuries, they just didn't develop enough players. But one of our notes when Sirianni came in, he made it clear in his meetings with the front office that they are going to put a high premium on player development. I know there was music to the front office's ears. And that's, by the way, that's been true. Not only Hurts, obviously, is the big one, but you look at Dickerson, Mailata, TJ Edwards, by the way, we didn't mention him. TJ Edwards developed with Nick Rollis, who's now the DC with Arizona.
Right.
And another good story.
Right. So let's start our look at the 2023 Eagles headed into training camp with one of the more fascinating positions to talk about. And it's not just the positions, but the usage and everything that's involved. And that would be the running back spot. For years, we sort of banged the table that most coaches, and we were right about this, especially Doug Peterson, even though they won a Super Bowl in 2017 with a committee, that coaches really like a feature back. They like a guy who can do it all because they want to telegraph what they're doing on offense. They want that Brian Westbrook that Andy Reid had, or a Deuce Staley, right? Or a LaShawn McCoy. And that's what they were hoping to get when they drafted Miles Sanders. Didn't really work out that way. But this coaching staff, Adam, which is still really only entering year 3, has a totally different, totally remade running back group, to the point where it looks like they still would want to be committee, but they've got to figure out how that committee looks and then what the usage goes from there. But I tell you this, as you look around the league, right, and you see the storylines about running backs like Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley and people unhappy with their money and not wanting to sign a tag, and then you see the stockpile of talent that the Eagles have at that running back position, and the cost that they're paying compared to what some of these teams may have to pay for one guy who's not even happy, and you realize Howie did a really good job here.
On paper, it does look like that way in terms of how good of a job Roseman did, because Penny's a former first-round pick. We know about the injury history. Yeah. Swift is, when healthy, is really, really good. Got great versatility. Gainwell is flash. He needs to be more consistent. Boston Scott's been an amazing story. They play the Giants. And Trey Sermon, Mr. 2 for 21 or 2 for 19, whatever he had last year.
17.
17, whatever. Yeah, whatever it was. But we noted last November, because we remember we were kind of like, okay, who are they going to cut to make room for whatever players coming off IR? We were told very strongly they're not cutting Sermon no matter what's out there.
Yep.
And they wanted to get him to the offseason. And you've heard the craziness of Sirianni, man. He loves talking about Trey Sermon. I know he plays up his players well, but every chance he gets to crowbar a comment in, he makes it. So it's a not only will be a committee. Here's I want to throw it back to you here. Is there anyone, because this is totally new for them. They, as you said, since 17, they haven't done this before. It's always been Sanders, and then they'd work other guys in. Is there one guy you could think of? Penny would make sense to me, but I don't. It's so because of his injury history, I don't know. Is there one guy here you go, he's the guy?
You mean like the lead guy or
lead guy? Well, that's what I'm saying. Are they going to have a lead guy, do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And for this position, I have been working backwards on it, right? Trying to figure this thing out. Meaning, I know Boston Scott's going to be the number 3 running back. I know Kenneth Gainwell, I'm pretty confident, is going to take a little bit of a step up and be a number 2 running back. And depending how injuries shake out, maybe a chance to be a number 1. But so if he's 3, Boston Scott, and Kenny Gainwell's 2, or at least we know those 2 are definitely 2 of the 3 or 4 running backs that are to be taken. Who are the other 2? And again, DeAndre Swift you gave up assets for DeAndre. You gave up a 4th round pick, which may not be like giving up a 1st round pick, but you don't just give away 4th round picks for free. DeAndre Swift's on this team. So I see DeAndre Swift, and I see Kenneth Gainwell, and I see Boston Scott as 3 of the 4. And that's where I keep coming down to, is this between Rashad Penny and Trey Sermon? And is it just easily Rashad Penny if he stays healthy? I don't know. I really don't know. I think the narrative on Trey Sermon has been real from the start. You just mentioned it. We had reported it last year. Coaches really liked him. Doesn't matter that he only got 2 carries. He was impressive. You heard Nick Sirianni say it. The Eagles have a lot of options here, but the one option I just have trouble seeing is DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, and Kenneth Gainwell all sort of jockeying to be 1 and 2 here. I don't know. I have trouble seeing that, Adam, even though the team does need a bruiser for the fourth quarter. It just seems like there's too much star power, too much ability and acumen there to have all 3 of those guys here. So, but that's where competition's going to wind up shaking it out.
So Penny, I believe, this is just me. No one's told me this. This is just knowing kind of how the league saw him. Penny's going to be their lead back. I don't know what that means. Is it 8 carries, 14? You're talking about the fourth quarter when they need someone with size.
Mm-hmm.
When Penny applies his size, which should be around 225, at one point with the Seahawks, I think it was around 240 or over it, but he's got himself in a much better shape. Now, another reason why I believe he'll be on this team, look for him to return kicks, in addition to Boston Scott and whoever they have, might be Gainwell, whoever they have there. But most people are not aware of this. Penny was a dynamic kickoff returner. On 81 returns in college, 30.6 yards per return. That's incredible. It's just not like, okay, they did it 5 times, it inflates his average. Just about 2,500 yards, return yards on just 81 returns for 30.6. That's a lot. And he also had, by the way, 7 kickoff returns for touchdown. He's not much of a punt returner. So I think that's something they're probably going to look at in training camp. I know other teams I spoke with looked at him if they would have signed him, mentioned it to me. There were 2 teams that thought about signing him, also to have him back on kicks, but Eagles beat him to it in terms of signing him. And he signed quickly. That you remember when he signed, we're like, wow, this is really soon.
Yeah,
his guarantee was so low. Wow,
right,
okay.
Right.
But he's got a chance to be a starter here.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying makes sense based on his resume of what he's done. I think making a guy that injury prone into a kickoff returner doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But if you're as deep as the Eagles are running back and want to see if that works for you, and you're not as concerned about, what happens if he pulls up or lame or gets hurt, then okay, I guess. But it just seems
Deshaun Jackson would return punts with his injury history. I mean, I don't think.
Yeah, but Deshaun Jackson didn't have nearly the type of injury history we're talking about major.
Right, but he got hurt a lot. Deshaun missed a ton of time with hamstring problems, and he was frail. But
the NFL tells you that the kickoff return is the single most injury-prone play in the league, which is why they've tried to basically eradicate it. So it's an odd pairing.
Concussions, yes.
If it gives them something, it gives them something. That'll be interesting. I just think it's interesting you feel, based on information, that Penny would be the lead back and not DeAndre Swift, who's much more versatile. Not nearly, well, I don't want to say not nearly. Obviously, Penny is a more explosive player based on his yards per carry average, which is over 6. It's unbelievable. More bruising player. But Swift,
he's more. I would disagree strongly. He's more finesse. Swift.
No, I didn't say Swift was. I know that Swift is more finesse. I'm saying, though, that he's more versatile than Rashad.
Yes. 100%. Yeah, sure.
Penny is more powerful, but that's kind of his. That's all his thing.
Well, he's no. Penny's unbelievably explosive for his size. Like you don't find guys who move like him. That's why the Seahawks shouldn't have reached in the first round. But he is rare size of combo of speed and power and agility. Remember 2 years ago at the end of he led the NFL.
Yeah. Oh, he was amazing.
Unbelievable. But he's got to be used, toss sweeps, get him outside on an outside zone and go. Now Swift is sort of shifty, dynamic, and he's very effective, by the way, in the red zone, but he's more finesse. And he more or less got benched last season.
Yeah, he did. Jamal Williams. Was it Jamal? No, not Jamal. That was 2 years ago. Who was the
Jamal Williams had 17 touchdowns.
Yeah, it was Jamal Williams last year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I keep, Jamal played for the Lions and the Packers, and crazy for me. But yeah, no, I get. Hey, listen, that's why it's a great competition, and that's why I think it's the most interesting competition of camp, just to see how this whole running back situation shakes itself out. So that is that, and again, Trey Sermon, he's like sort of like, I don't want to call him the forgotten guy, but I certainly am not, gonna count him out of somehow figuring out a way to get on this team because of the way they talked about it.
Yeah, and he's got size. So that, I want to get to that. So here's the thing with Penny.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you got Penny, major injury history, Swift, major injury history. They're completely different runners. That's the unique thing about these 5 backs, is that they all seem to bring something to the table. Like Gainwell, who the hell knew he'd be a goal line back? He's pretty effective at it.
Yeah.
It was just kind of strange. And by the way, Boston Scott converts pretty well. But as you said very well, and it made me laugh when you said that, and a lot of people like when you said that, it's a grab bag with Scott. You never know what his role, other than against the Giants, is going to be.
Right.
Not saying he'd be inactive, but there's some weeks he won't get a touch from scrimmage.
And,
So
and he makes the most money.
yeah, right. He's making $2 million this year, and the guarantee's pretty good.
Yeah.
He's got the most guarantee at signing of any of the backs. So to me, Penny not on third. I'm talking about primary, first and second down back. It could be 8 to 12 carries per game.
Right.
Swift 6 to 8, but 3 or 4 catches per game, or 3 or 4 targets per game. Now Gainwell, I know he's the guy of Penny and Swift, who's not new. He knows this offense. This is his 3rd year in the offense. But we also know that he got benched, more or less, to start the season. His role fluctuated. He came on late last season. Remember, I was there in Berea, Ohio, when he basically got taken out because he screwed up a couple plays. So you never know with him. I know Coso likes him. We all like Kenny Gainwell, but he's not been a consistent player. So to me, the primary first and second down back, whatever that means, because they don't know yet, they got to get there first, see what it looks like, and see how everybody holds up. And this is new to them. Remember, you can't get touched in OTAs. It's a line dance. And by the way, OTAs are all passing. It's 7-on-7 with every once in a while a handoff, but it's all passing drills. So it's a competition and I'm not, as you said, I'm not ruling out Trey Sermon for being a surprise here. This is the first year in the 6 years we've done the show that there's a lot of room here for some surprise for guys, not to come out of nowhere, but a guy like Sermon. Oh, wow, this guy was a 3rd round pick. They claimed off waivers. They decided not to cut him last year. Who knows? You never know.
Yeah. By the way, I always love to play this game with you. The trade market never makes sense game. Eagles gave up a 4th round pick for DeAndre Swift, right?
2025. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a 4th round pick, right?
Yeah, sure.
They also gave up a couple of years ago a 4th round pick for Jannard Avery. Jannard Avery, DeAndre Swift. Kind of crazy. The market never makes sense. Let's move on to coordinators, right? Offensive and defensive coordinators, big storyline. You have a new offensive coordinator with Brian Johnson, an in-house guy, and then a new defensive coordinator, Sean Desai, a guy brought in from Seattle via Chicago, has the Fangio stamp of approval because he coached under him. He was a defensive coordinator in Chicago. It caused a little bit of a ripple effect, right, on the Eagles defense by bringing him in. You wind up losing one of your top assistants, Denard Wilson, and then having to make some changes after also losing your linebackers coach to Arizona, as you mentioned. So with these 2 new coordinators, both who are presiding over units that last year were top 5 offense and defense.
Yeah.
Would you expect much to change on either side of the ball? Should much change on either side from a scheme or philosophy standpoint?
Great question. Let's start with offense with Brian Johnson. This is his 3rd year. I know he's calling plays. There's a saying in coaching: why change something that works? Now we'll get the defense of why it was. We said with the Fangio scheme, from talking to people who've worked in it, they don't all run it exactly the same way. It's like 75 to 80% is going to be the same, and it's just their nuances, their version of it. But anyway, getting back to Brian Johnson, he knows obviously it goes way back with Hurts and the family. So, and he knows what Jalen brings to the table. So I don't expect that to change. The only thing we said with Hurts is, because we know he's not a check down quarterback. He's a very aggressive thrower, which you love, and he put the ball in harm's way. He's really good with that. You were talking about on our Monday show, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He's really good at doing that, which is one of the many things you love about him. But the other thing that needs to be better, and this is where coaching comes to place, and you're showing him when you watch the film, is okay, why did you run that time? The running quarterbacks, we know they design a lot for him. We've talked about the running quarterbacks over the years, whereas Josh Allen, Hurts, you can go through all the quarterbacks, Cam Newton, you can go through all the years over the years of the guys who run. But there's sometimes it's there and they decide to run. So you're hoping that's the one thing. Now through coaching, You show it to him, you get it through to him. Could Brian Johnson be hard coaching? Because we know that Jalen wants it. He said that, and we know that for a fact that he doesn't mind getting yelled at. It's all part of it. It's how you get great. It's just take it and be better. But that's one part of his game. That's the one missing link here. Is when you see it, don't run, get rid of it, or check it down. His predecessor was unwilling to do that, and that cost him.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I still think also at the end of the day, and Nick Sirianni has said this, it's not like it's the coordinator's offense. It's Nick Sirianni's offense with the coordinator's input, the assistant's input. Obviously, every team's offense is a collaborative offense, but when you watch the 49ers, you know that's Kyle Shanahan's offense. Right. Yeah, I think
I'm not changing it, by the way.
Right. And as good as the Eagles were last year, I'm reluctant to say that was Shane Steichen's offense. I think it was the brainchild of a lot of really good minds, including Nick Sirianni in there. I don't think people realize how much he had an impact on that offense.
The big thing we talked about prior to the season, you're going to know all you need to know about how they feel about Hurts. If they come out throwing, which they did in most games, they're all in. They're no longer going to be a running team, with exception the Green Bay. There's always exceptions to anything. Mm-hmm. But they want to come out throwing. In fact, you mentioned Steichen. This floored me. I picked it up because we've been talking about this for 6 years now. The Eagles, since our friend Joe Banner was with the Eagles and Jeffrey Lurie, they were on board with this. They want to be forward thinking. Going back to the 60s, they had the numbers. If you come out throwing more than you run it, you're going to win a majority of the time. That's just the numbers show you. Mm-hmm. Steichen said, even with Jonathan Taylor, they said, what's your philosophy? We want to throw early, get the lead, then run. It seems like shouldn't every team do this? They have the numbers, but that's not true. That's yes on the surface, but they don't all do that. But I was kind of surprised that Steichen said that, but that was good that he said it, because he's making clear this is the way that you win, because he learned that from Philly. Because that's not the way a lot of teams do it. You'd be surprised.
Yeah. By the way, I can't wait to see Anthony Richardson. I just really can't. I'm so fired up that those joint practices are here in Philly. Correct? There's one.
Just one. Yeah, they're only doing one here.
I hope he's healthy. Yeah. I can't wait to see it with that running back game that they have. Right, that he can work off of with the read option and zone read, and then a guy like Michael Pittman, who you don't always have to be the most accurate guy. You can throw it up. Pittman can get. I'm just excited. I'm just excited for Anthony.
He is.
Take some time. But I'm just still excited for it because we've never seen anything like it.
I mean, and I know there are accuracy questions. Josh Allen's the best example with great coaching. His accuracy is terrible at the D1 AA level, whatever they call it, football.
Josh Allen, yeah.
Josh Allen's terrible at Wyoming. That's why a lot of teams criticize the Bills for selecting them, and obviously, Daboll, Ken Dorsey deserve a lot of credit. But great coaching. Mm-hmm. Well, the players want to be coached, could go overcome anything, and that's and one thing John G. Filippo told us on our Patreon. John, whenever we've had him on about 3 or 4 times, but John said one of the things he knew, because he interviewed Hurts in 2020 in the combine for the Bears. He said Hurts had gone through a lot. He at Oklahoma, he got hit a lot, and it showed his toughness and his willingness, because they asked him to do different things that he did at Alabama. And he could tell that he was absolutely coachable, not only by tape, by in their meeting, whatever they got 20 minutes, he clearly could see that. And that's really important to be coachable.
No doubt about it. By the way, I forgot, I neglected to mention, I wanted to welcome our new subscribers, including our friend Mike, for now becoming a Patreon member. So you can do that at patreon.com/InsideTheBirds. So defensively, Sean Desai, you would expect that, as you just mentioned, we've been told that teams run different versions of the Vic Fangio defense. By the way, we're going to see the actual version of the Vic Fangio defense this year, right? The Eagles play the Dolphins, don't they? Do they not?
I don't think so.
Oh, they play the.
Actually, no, they do. No, actually, you know what? No, they do. I made the joke last year that the Eagles are lucky they don't play the Dolphins. It's the Tigers.
Right.
People are like, oh, they're not going to be very good.
They play the Patriots. They play the
Jets. They play.
Yeah.
No, because I remember wanting to go to their training camp. Yeah, they play in week 7 in Philly. That'll be interesting. In fact, you and I saw Tyreek Hill. That was pretty special. Then I saw him in Tampa, where you ran Carlton Davis wild, like he turned him inside out like a pretzel.
I know that remember Slay had a rough day that day in practice.
Wow.
In fact, I think he left with one of those like, I think I just pulled something because I'm done with Tyreek Hill
Uh,
leg deals.
that was vaguely. I just remember seeing Tyreek Hill, and this is whatever 20 some odd years I've covered this business. I've seen Owens, Terrell Owens in practice. I saw AJ Brown last summer. And
Yeah.
in OTAs was special. But this guy is at another level. Like we've never seen this before.
I've never seen change of direction like that from
that's it. Getting inside and outside. Oh no. Okay. Antonio Brown, Paul Gunther told me
uh-huh.
that he was the most difficult receiver to cover because you had no idea how he's good, how he got off press coverage like nobody's business, and you just he said it was next to impossible to cover. But Tyreek Hill's is faster, more explosive.
Yeah, I mean, the way he can turn his body completely around on a dime is just so unique.
Yeah.
All right, so getting back to Sean Desai, I think that if you're gonna want to see a little bit of an adjustment and a change in philosophy, it's not on offense. You hope that you want to add to that. You don't want to be stale, but on defense, you're hoping that Sean Desai comes in here and just has a little bit more, I don't know, maybe ingenuity or ways to use his defensive line and maybe with some post snap and pre snap movement to start to fail some good quarterbacks.
Yep, that would be it. In fact, John told us, Flip told us last time he was on with us, is what was so cool because he gave us a visual of when he went against Fangio, his scheme, whether it's Fangio himself or whoever, because they have the same philosophy though. So one where the Fangio disciples all great, you don't blitz very much. That's because you don't sacrifice coverage. And what you were saying, pre and post snap. Now that's the thing we don't know. Now Chuck Pagano, John said, because he coached with Pagano. Chuck, after Vic left to be the Broncos head coach, he ran some of his concepts and ran some of Vic's. Whereas Desai for the 1 year ran all Vic's. I would expect that to happen here though. Like the reason why though we ranked, these are top 10 training camp questions and issues. We ranked this number 2 because there's an unknown. You don't know until they get there. You don't quite know exactly what they're going to do.
Right. I mean, and obviously Sean has to do. He can't just do maybe what he wants to do. He has to see what his personnel is capable of doing. I don't think Terrell Edmonds played in a scheme where there was a whole lot of pre-post movement, in the Steelers system and what they do. And obviously Justin Evans is just getting here from New Orleans. They draft Sidney Brown, who played in more of a conventional Tampa too. So like you got to get guys who learned first, but it's not like last year where they were able to, kind of like be there from OTAs and get to know Jonathan Gannon's system, and he got to handpick certain guys coming in. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly they can pick it all up. And I am curious on D-line alignment. Does he slant? Does he stunt against runs? Does he move guys around a little bit more than say Jonathan Gannon did? Does he overload things like that? I did see some footage of that when he was with the Bears, but again, he knew his personnel a lot better having come up through the Bears. He's got to learn what he can do with all these new players. In not a whole lot of time either, because again, they don't practice as much as they used to. They didn't have as many OTAs, so might be a little slow start for the Eagles defense.
Six practices. Yeah, they only had 6. And as Yvonne says, Jason Yvonne says, know your personnel. That's on your point. Like that is like for evaluating a coordinator offense defense, that's top 3. When you go, okay, how did he use the personnel? Someone might say number 1.
Right.
But it could be just philosophy of where you're going to blitz or not, but that's tied into, or at least being deceptive with your coverages. That was the one criticism of Gannon, which was very valid. Because he had the excuse of not being good enough at corner opposite Slay because Steven Nelson didn't run well enough. Well, he went to Houston. And Bradbury really redeemed himself, no question about it. After what happened with the Giants, he revived his career. And you had 2 guys with size at corner, better and savvy. Why didn't you? There was just not enough of it. That was one thing. So moving forward here, we're going to move on to the next topic, the number 3 here of issues. That's the one thing we're not going to know. We'll look for it. We're in training camp starting late next week, though they have the first 4 or 5 days with the acclimation period, but you still can do that. You just can't be as physical as you want.
Right. All right, moving on. We'll get into our third storyline in a second. Want to remind everybody that it's Ocean Casino Resort's 5th birthday this summer. They can't wait to celebrate with you. Join Ocean for exciting promotions and sweepstakes, headline entertainment, the best day life and nightlife lineup in AC, the debut of the birthday bar, exclusive local collabs and partnerships, commemorative 5th birthday merchandise, and so much more. Don't miss stunning fireworks and unique events all summer long. Ocean Rewards members will enjoy over $5 million in gifts and prizes, so be sure to sign up for an Ocean Rewards card to get in on the fun next time you visit. All right. I love this next storyline. This is a huge storyline, and it's, the Eagles' offensive line is always a hot topic, and right guard is a vacancy right now. It's a spot that will be filled most likely by either the rookie Tyler Steen, the second-year pro Cam Jurgens, and would you consider Jack Driscoll like the dark horse veteran candidate? Like if you were to handicap this race, he's certainly third on the totem pole, right?
Well, here's the thing. Now we're doing battles in the next show, but just
Yeah,
explain what
yeah,
the
but just
challenges
looking at
are.
it, yeah.
Right. Just explain. See, here's the thing with Jack Driscoll. They're very light on depth on the offensive line with Gillard signing with Tennessee, say Milo leaving. Right now, if using your term, if it goes according to Hoyle and Steen wins, well, Jurgens will be the top backup in two. He'll be the top backup. Well, I don't know how well he knows left guard. It could be Suopeta. But the only two backups with any, I don't even call Jurgens getting experience, but the only real guy is Driscoll. That's it. In terms of real experience, I mean, Roderick Johnson's had a smattering of playing time, and Cameron Tom, long shot to make the team. They don't have a lot of experience anymore.
Right.
Fred Johnson as well, but guys have really started a bunch of games. They don't have that anymore.
I would imagine that the Eagles look at Jack Driscoll at him and they see some of his strengths, some of his limitations, the versatility that he's shown, and think that he is the ideal backup swing lineman for them. He can play right tackle, he can play right guard. Like you said, he had to play left tackle in a pinch, but I think that if everything went to their plans, Jack Driscoll would be their very valuable swing lineman that they've had, but not their starter. I mean, if he's their starter, it probably means that maybe they weren't getting what they wanted out of the other two candidates, and they felt because he's actually played that position that they go the safe route. But the other two are supposed to have more upside than Jack Driscoll.
Oh, no doubt. They're Steen and Jurgens are better athletes. But Driscoll, look, he's been a Jeff Stoutland guy. He's now on the final year of his rookie deal. This is actually important for him. If he could win the job, that'd be huge for his career. I mean, getting a nice free agent deal. So he is right now. If it goes like we think it's going to go, he'll be the top backup lineman. Now, they could sign a veteran before the season starts. Remember, folks, the season does not start in September. That's when games are played. As we've learned the hard way, when we go, how could they go in this season or how could they go to this training camp without this, that, and the other? Well, that's what late August, early September is when they make a move if they feel they need to.
You worry at all about Jason Kelce in one more year, a little older, and now he kind of loses that guy next to him that he has said was so instrumental in helping him, whether it's using the silent count or helping him read the defense. I mean, that was his sort of co-captain of the offensive line. And now you're about to throw in a guy who's either a rookie or a second-year player who's never played. I mean, it's not like you're going from one right guard to another natural right guard who's a veteran who's played in the league for quite a while. So do you wonder what kind of negative impact it could have on Jason Kelce?
It's just communications better. But I'll give you I'll take this one level up. Here's the big thing that I want to get to. If these replacements are not good, you're going to have what's called slide protection. When you readjust your protection to help out that guard, that actually hurts you. Yes, it helps that guy, but you leave gaps. Just the integrity of your offensive line gets impacted. So explain to me when I ran this by someone, he goes, "Hey man, slide protection. You're going to." This guy said, "Philly will have to do this." So if Steen's struggling, or if Jurgens wins it, who's very inexperienced with the offensive line, and they're not doing well, whoever's starting, slide protection comes in, and that it helps. But you have other concerns, so you don't want to do that. So that's just something that unless you have to, obviously you do it. So that's just one thing before we move on to take a look at, which we'll be looking for in training.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, when if you have to dedicate 2 linemen to 1 blocker, and then you're facing a team like Wink Martindale's Giants, who just, like, gets off on being able to confuse your protection scheme to begin with. I mean, that's sort of like a feather in the cap for Wink to be able to just kinda attack you from
And
break down your scheme which is already, a little bit compromised. So good point on that.
by the way, okay, they play Fangio, the real Vic
Yeah, that's
in
a good
Philly,
point
okay?
too.
They play they play the real Vic, so that's coming. Now, it's not about blitzing, it's about breaking. Well, I'm sorry. With Wink it is, because he doesn't care. He's like Greg Williams, remember Greg Williams one time. He didn't
Yeah,
give a crap. He just, I'm blitzing and I'm here to break down your protection. Where other guys are more strategic with it.
right.
Uh, well, I mean, he finds a weakness and he exploits it, but
Yeah, it's a little bit of both because Wink gets a free rusher on a 4-man rush
he
as much
does.
as
He's
anybody.
incredible.
Yeah,
Great point. But his blitz percentage is usually near the top.
yeah.
Where other guys or some teams will be like Vic will be somewhere in the middle, a little below, but he finds something. But
Mhm.
if you look at it, right, the teams that could really rush the passer, Washington, depending on what if these guys ever could get together, the 4 of them. Okay, Aaron Donald, but that's pretty much it for the Rams. But hey, he's like 2 players. Week 6 at the Jets, they have a great front. They have a great front. Fangio in week 7. Washington again. Dallas, when we talk about with Cosell, they've got a good pass rush. The Niners in week 13. Dallas again in week 14. Draymond Jones. I know Seattle's defense wasn't very good last season. They're going to have to face him. And then your guy, the guy Wink in week 16 and 18. So there are going to be some challenges here. And you know what, quite frankly, I know the Patriots defense isn't that good, but Belichick and Gerard Mayo is their D coordinator without being called that.
Mhm.
They're going to try to figure something out there.
Oh, certainly. And by the way, just us talking about it makes me think that remember how we said when the Giants got Wink Martindale, they were really taking a step forward, already having gotten Dable and already having gotten
Yeah,
Kafka. Now,
coaching's great.
the Miami Dolphins getting Vic, if Tua can stay healthy, because I don't think the talent's a question. I think he showed last year he can throw the ball around if he's protected. That team could be. I know they got offensive line issues, but if they've
They do.
resolved them in any way, that team could be really, really good.
Well, from a talent standpoint, the one thing with Tua is, though he's got one of the quickest releases in the NFL, yeah, when he gets rid of it quickly. The problem with him is occasionally he holds on the ball too long and he could be 240 pounds. It doesn't matter. He just doesn't see the rush, and that's when he gets hit.
Yes.
So, but yes, he is when he is on in that Shanahan-esque offense that Mike McDaniel's running. It's like target practice with, and that's why. By the way, that's why Waddle running after the catch, he went from like around 10 yards per catch. What did I don't know what it was crazy.
It was almost like 17. It was crazy
Right.
last year. Yeah.
And it's running after the catch. Tua's not going to throw past 30 yards. It's just run slants and digs, man.
That's all you need.
Exactly. Mike McDaniel's terrific at scheming and designing. So you're right. Their roster's incredibly, and Bradley Chubb now is a year and a half or so out off the ACL. Oh, they traded for Jalen Ramsey.
Right.
Come
Right.
on.
Yeah. No, that's a good team right there. All right, back to the Eagles. Moving on from right guard, how about sort of another interior role, this time on offense or skill positions, the interior wide receiver job here. We've got this is not just a discussion, right, about Olamide, Zacchaeus, and Quez Watkins. It also invites the conversation of 11 personnel and 12 personnel because they have some really good interior receiving tight end weapons as well.
Well, Nelson Aguilar really showed at times when he revived his career with the Eagles that he could be a good slot receiver. Now he's got paid well, but really since then, who have they really had who's been a good slot? But they've tried a bunch of guys. We've said this the last year. Watkins was miscast as a slot receiver. He's not a possession receiver.
Right.
It's just not. He's the vertical guy. So the Zacchaeus could do all of that. And moving this forward here, how Zacchaeus does will largely determine if they go out and actually add someone for that competition. They probably are not thinking about that. But if it doesn't work, we've seen that in the back of their minds, whether Gardner Johnson, Darby, the way the Eagles think under Roseman is they go with, okay, we're going to let these guys battle. But in the back of their minds, they've got every team has this, all 32. They've got their free agency board and they mark, okay, let's either work this out. We'll call the agent. Okay, hey, listen, we're going to be in touch. If this doesn't work out, or they'll call them throughout the summer. Hey, what are you thinking? Does he have interest elsewhere? We'll be in touch if we think we need to, but hey, just think of us if something opens up.
Yeah. I also think the Eagles will look, and we'll find out more in training camp and as it goes on. And I just think it makes sense in my head. If you want to get Quez Watkins in the best position to succeed, it's outside the numbers. That's, use that speed. He's the fastest receiver on team. And I think Devontae Smith can play 20% of his snaps in the slot and still be really, really effective as a vertical slot. Almost Aguilar-ish. They're not built the same way, but he has a better skill set, way better than Nelson Aguilar. And so if you want to get creative and you want to stress some defenses, you can put Quez Watkins on the outside, move Devontae Smith on inside, and then, got AJ Brown on at the X and be pretty prolific. I think offensively, we didn't see that much last year, but because they were trying to make Watkins into a slot. But just my sort of hunch, no reporting on this. I just feel like they're going to realize the best way for Quez to succeed is on the outside, and that Devontae can pretty much play anywhere you line him up as a move Z, and that'll be some packages that you will see this year.
One and another one, and we'll move on here. It's Britton Covey. I know he didn't do anything at receiver last year. I know that they were hopeful he'd for the slot job or get at least some time there. He really didn't. This is a guy that this is a guy that they really scouted hard. They really liked him coming out of the draft. In fact, the fall of 21, like this is a guy that they really kept an eye on. I'm just kind of surprised. We got it, just didn't happen for him in training camp. He could not put together the kind of training camp like he did in OT. Of course, you can't touch the players and can't get physical with them, and he just didn't get the job done.
Right.
Got much better in the second half when they blocked better for him as a punt returner, but that's a guy who could factor in a little bit. I wouldn't rule that out either.
Absolutely. All right. The competition of camp. We'll talk about it in our, comp next podcast. But obviously, all eyes, big storyline is on the punting position there between Aaron Sipos and the new guy, Tyler Zentner. Looking forward to that. There's very rarely I say, do I go into a camp and say, I'm looking. Yeah. Even at the OTAs I was at, Adam, I was timing the punters and watching them. And I thought that they were kind of 50-50 in OTAs. And I think we got the same kind of feedback too, that, they both were right around the same in OTAs. But yeah. So we'll see. That's going to be an interesting competition. I would bet you if we did a Twitter poll on who fans wanted to win, Tyler Zentner would probably win by like 95%, merely because everybody's tired of Sipos and upset from the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and obviously Brett Kern, it just didn't work. They tried. They didn't know we'd have a dead leg by the time they got up, and his leg was finished. That's why he retired. But yeah, this is really important. Now, we've got this. I mean, it's hard to argue with the top, like the 4 issues that we had ranked there. Man, this is. I mean, if you said it's 1, it's hard to say 1, but man, field position, it's super huge. Like kickoffs don't mean much anymore, or kickoff returns, because there's some games teams don't have kickoff returns because the kicker punts it out of the kicks it out of the end zone, or you were talking earlier about the revised rules here. There definitely going to be some games where teams just don't return it because everything that's going on with the kicking game. But punting is going to happen, and it field position. There were some issues last year. Sipos is very inconsistent. We know he got hurt, but before that, he was inconsistent. And Zentner's a guy who could kick off. He's a kicker / punter. Not that they didn't need a kicker; they got a pretty good one. But they need to get this punting thing right. I know they haven't put a lot of resources in terms of money in it, but this is one issue where they clearly missed last season. I'm not saying they didn't know going in it would be a miss, but that's one of the few issues that they had that just did not work with the punt.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to move on to our next few topics before we get out of here. First, I want to stop real quick so you can hear a word from our great sponsors. All right, Adam. Next topic I think is very under-discussed, but we're going to be really looking into this as camp goes on and into the season. You lose a guy like Javon Hargrave. Say what you want about his run defense, which we criticize and left the Eagles vulnerable at times. But do the Eagles in 2023, as we sit here right now, have enough of a pocket-pushing interior to continue to be a fearsome pass rush without Javon Hargrave?
That's, to me, it's another issue. One of the reasons why I don't think the record will be as good as last year, 14-3, which is amazing, is we know that it wasn't that Hargrave was so bad against the run. It was his effort, we were told off tape study. he was so into getting pressure upfield and not playing the run as the technique as well as he should have. We know he's a smaller guy, but he could have given a better effort against runs. So obviously, it's superior pass rusher for interior guy. So it's they're not going to have that. Jalen Carter is very gifted. We've talked about he's drawn comparison from personnel people to Ndamukong Suh at his best. And Suh was a better than average pass rusher in his heyday as interior lineman. That's pretty good. But Hargrave's better. He's another step.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to Jimmy rig this to the point. Plus, you have a new coordinator, as you were talking. It was a great point. Like, they've got to figure out what Carter does best. They know from tape study what he did at Georgia, but this is the NFL. You take those attributes and in your scheme, which is different from Georgia's, you got to figure this out. Cox, we know what he can do, but he's older at 32. They're going to miss. There's no question. We'll talk more about the rotation on Monday's show, but there's no question they're going to miss him. I mean, it's to finish this off. You're right. The way you framed the question, they're going to miss Hargrave blowing up the pocket. That's just a fact.
Yeah. Hargrave was to me like a wolf in sheep's clothing. He was like a defensive end in a defensive tackle's body, right? I mean, he just had really good get off, very quick to the quarterback, good hand usage. You almost wish. I think he wished he was only 250 pounds, so he could, or 40 pounds, he could have been an edge rusher, right? Instead of having to be a big 300-pounder play in the middle. And I guess the question will be, as you just framed it, can Jalen Carter and Milton Williams sort of combine together to make up for what they're missing in Javon Hargrave's ability to pinch the pocket? And obviously with Fletcher Cox a year older, can he still bring it the way he brought it, 5 or 6 years ago?
Hargrave's first step quickness is no offense. Jalen Carter's bigger and stronger, probably more talented as an overall football player, but he's not Hargrave's first step.
Right.
Something we've rarely talked about from tape study. We're told Hargrave's first step.
Oh, lightning quick.
Terrific.
Yeah.
What's that?
Lightning quick. I mean,
yes.
Like at the end.
By the way, guess what scheme he's playing in with the Niners?
The obviously the Niner the wide 9 scheme. Yeah.
Trying to put a W. Sorry.
No, I couldn't think of the verbiage, but it's
wide 9.
There.
Wide 9 with
right.
Chris Kusarek, who should have been Eagles D line coach. That's another story that they Hunter Schwartz. That's Schwartz's guy.
Right.
But Hargrave in the wide 9, they're paying him $20 million a year to be great in it. So at 30 years old, got a 2-year structure, $40 million over the first 2 years. My goodness.
Oh boy. Well, you can do that when your quarterback's a 7th round pick or still on a rookie contract like Trey Burke. So just for 2 years. All right. Next big topic. Linebackers, off the ball linebackers. Man, it sort of feels like we're going back to 2 years ago when it's like, I think there's some great promise and potential with Nakobe Dean. So it's not like 2 years ago when you had like Duke Riley and Nate Gary and God knows whoever we were throwing out there. But at least there's
Eric Wilson.
Eric Wilson. I mean, there's at least a guy here with some really good potential.
Who was the guy, the Denver line? Who's another lighter linebacker?
No, is it Corey Nelson?
Well, Nelson was he safety or linebacker?
No, that was the Broncos linebacker that they signed.
There you go. That was another one, undersized guy.
Yeah, Jatavius. Who's the guy who'd retired? Jatavius from the Chargers.
Yeah, he never. He Charger linebacker, smaller guy who retired right before they reported.
Yeah,
that was weird. But so Nick Morrow comes here. He should be the weak. They play 2 inside backers. Morrow should be one of them. Yes, Christian Ellis. We'll talk more about that on Monday. My problem is, I know the league now, guys are playing in the 220s, 215, 218 at linebacker. They're protected. I've talked about this. You got to protect the linebacker. You got to clean them off. They could just get downhill. But with Morrow having like a zillion tackles last season, the Bears didn't try to bring him back. Doesn't that concern you a little bit?
Of course. Well, it always concerns me with linebackers who are journeymen, who make a lot of tackles. You don't know if those tackles are 5 or 6 yards downfield. There used to be safeties in this league who would finish with 80 tackles, and you'd think they're great. Then they would go play on a different scheme or for a different team, or the next year they just wouldn't be as good because they're making those tackles, like 10 yards down the field. So those can be misleading numbers. I think Moore is a decent player for what he's asked to do. I'm not trying to say those are inflated statistics. I just think that, there's a reason why guys go from a team to a team and don't have a year like that, but don't get an extension. It's because they're seen as sort of dime a dozen or fungible.
Right. And Paul Gunther told us, Paul had him when Nick started his career with the Raiders. or maybe in his second year, but Morrow was a safety at Greenville College.
Okay. Yeah.
And what Paul told us for Patreon subscribers was great. You could, by the way, if you subscribe to Patreon, we archive every interview we've done with these coaches and front office people since we started last fall. So I know we've got a bunch of people just sign up. Don't forget, just scroll down. They're all there. Paul outlines, and he went on for 5 minutes about Morrow and how he put the green dot on him. He was that smart to take it. He was able to do that despite very limited experience playing linebacker. It's pretty cool. But again, you can't make up for the lack of size. And Dean is not the biggest guy physically either. He has more weight, but he's obviously was a big time football player. He had injury concerns, so he dropped. But 2 new starters now, so that's a question to me.
Yeah, no doubt about it. By the way, great pull on Greenville College. Awesome pull. I just looked it up. I don't know how you pulled that, but that was an excellent.
I don't look it up. I'm like, it was some obscure Division III school. Because when they sign him, like, Greenville, who the hell is that? I think it's in Illinois. and Gunther brought it up. He goes, we coached Nick, and we went to this small school. Oh, another thing is he said he was super coachable. And he must have outlined 20 things, but a couple of things I remembered. Talking about how coachable and how much he wanted to be great. And he's a really good dude, like really high character, but he's just really small frame. So on your point, Hargrave leaves, Carter and Jordan Davis to help clean this guy off.
There you go. All right. 2 more topics, then we're out. First, I want to remind everybody to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto, so make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com and on Twitter at phlsportsnation. Let's also hear from our great friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
Then if you stop into Sky Motor Cars in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You'll get a great deal. Now, Adam, if you remember, I don't know, probably 2 months ago now, we were talking in a podcast about the Eagles kicking the tires on DJ Fluker, who had been a first-round pick and had played offensive line for a couple of different teams. And, what we said was that shows you that the Eagles are always looking at and concerned about always offensive line depth. Now, we talked about Jack Driscoll. He gives you depth in one area, but you lost Andre Dillard. You lost the starting right guard. So you're not nearly as deep from top to bottom this year, theoretically, although they drafted Tyler Steen, as you've been in the past from an experience. You don't have a first-round pick yet. No, you just don't have a first-round pick who comes off the bench for you the way Dillard could. So clearly something to watch this camp and this season is, do they make more moves? Do they fortify the line a little bit more? And how do some of these young performers in camp do on the offensive line?
Yeah, and that to me is, I mentioned earlier in the show, that to me is definitely a top 10 issue. The lack of depth. Driscoll's at swing tackle or lineman, actually. They need one more guy. They definitely need one more guy. It doesn't have to be a high salary guy, a veteran, sort of a journeyman who started a bunch of games, who's got maybe 1 or 2 years left in him. Kind of guy that, and we promised I have my creation. We'll talk about this in a future show, just about who's out there. So yeah, it is an issue. There's no doubt it's a top 10 issue going to training.
And Fluker never wound up signing yet, as of right.
In fact, he's been out of football for a couple of years.
Yeah,
I don't think he started in 2020.
No, it's been a bit for him.
Yeah, so his weight is I've been a challenge. Obviously, Stoutland knows him, but just as you said, kick the tires, and that's the kind of thing you do now. In fact, you'll see this. Geoff and I going to training camps over the years. At Nova, what are there, 3 fields at the Nova Care Complex?
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll see the Eagles, all teams do this. Like they usually have 3 or 4 field teams. 3. They'll work players out weekly on an adjacent field. You'll see these guys running with a stopwatch. We can tell it's not an Eagle because these guys are working out. Sometimes they work guys out together. They work them out individually. And it's kind of weird when you see a veteran, like, wait a minute, that's so-and-so. Why is he wearing Eagles gear? Oh, we're working out.
All right, I'm gonna finish this off. We'll finish this off with this. I'm gonna give you the guy who I think is going to be the story of training camp, because training camp is set up for a guy like this to just it's usually like the running back, like a Henry Josie or a wide receiver like Jordan.
Oh, you didn't
But
say it.
on defense, I think Nolan Smith is going to wind up being that guy that everybody, because he's a practice junkie. We saw that in the OTA. I mean, he's everywhere. People are going to be impressed with how fast he runs at that size and his explosion. And it may not be able to, it may be sort of a false indicator of how quickly he'll make an impact. We don't know as a rookie, but training camp is made for a guy like Nolan Smith.
All right, let's go back to your two eyes at OTAs. Remind everyone what you saw from Nolan.
So again, like he's on the edge, right? And his job in the OTAs is to take 2 steps toward the quarterback, like a get off toward the quarterback, but then he can't hit him. So then to drop back or run wherever the ball goes, right? Now you got to go get into coverage. But he would run, like if the quarterback completed a pass to a receiver and then the play is dead, but the receiver does what he's supposed to do, which is run all the way to the end zone on every play. Nolan Smith would do the same thing. He would run with the ball until the end, not till the whistle stopped, but all the way past the whistle into the end zone, literally every single play. And remember, he's changing momentum. Unlike the receiver who's running around and catching the ball, Nolan Smith is going toward the quarterback, stopping, reversing direction into coverage, and then running all the way down the field. And he just did it all day long. And I remember he said it. He said, I'm that guy at practices at 100%. And we saw it. And people I think are going to fall in love with that practice element that he will bring.
He did an interview with Chris Long on his podcast. I was like, this kid is so like he's like otherworldly mature. He seemed to be. No, we'll see. I mean, I know he's a very high character. We'll see how they use him, but I was just blown away by that interview. I connected with. I liked hearing young people speak.
Yeah,
and you can just tell if this all works out, they'll figure out a way. It won't just be if it all works out. He'll go back up Reddick. We talked about him potentially playing inside linebacker because I know coaches over the years will really like guys who could rush from an inside linebacker standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
If they play, the Eagles have played some 43 front with this scheme. Fangio's scheme will do that. All teams, 3-4 teams play is Breco Cell totals. Odd man fronts, in nickel they play 4-man front. So he may line up as a DN. Who knows? Or you can play on the ball. You could try that. You do that as he gets bigger physically. There's other things you can do with him.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think this kid. It's really the only issue that the one story we don't know. We know about Dean, why he dropped. I don't have a straight answer for personnel people around the league. Why the hell did this guy drop so far? What's the issue?
Yeah, I mean, it's size, usage, where he best projects. I mean, again, he's a great practice player and he was productive at Georgia. I don't know that he's perfect for every scheme. If you run a 4-3, you probably don't envision Nolan Smith being as an impact for you.
I know, but I mean,
because he's not a hand in the dirt defensive end. He's very. I mean, that's
part of it, yes, but it doesn't mean he can't put weight on. I think people are part of it. It's on what you're saying is they pigeonhole him. Okay, he's just over 6'2". He's 235 to 240. Does he have the frame to put on 10 pounds? Well, now if he does, he could potentially play with his hand down in the dirt. As you're saying, he probably doesn't project that, but there are ways to do this.
Right.
You just remember when you draft, it's not about now. It's about projecting where they're going to be in 3 years, and this is where Sean Desai, as we close this out. Mm-hmm. This is going to be on him. I love your point about this. This could be a Joker type player in training camp based on what we saw in OTAs. He certainly can be, and this is where the late great Jim Johnson was special. With he players playing a Joker role. You got to have a vision for these guys. This guy's a really good football player. I wasn't thinking it like you were, but you got me thinking so much about this now. The first practice I'm at, I'm going to be watching him probably more than most players.
Hey, he could.
Where they line him up.
Could be a chess piece. That's a lot to ask of a kid, though. But like you mentioned, he's got a great head on his shoulders. So
yeah, and I just covering this team for so many years. Some guys come in really smart, or some guys okay, wow, he's really gifted. He knows what he's doing, but sometimes you hear a guy speak, you go, if he backs up what he's saying or what I'm hearing or what we hear behind the scenes, he's got all that. He's just not the biggest guy in the world. Now this is where Desai and his new coaches, they have all these new coaches on defense. They got to figure it out.
No doubt about it. Well, that's for us to figure out going forward as well. We've just went through our major storylines going into camp, which again starts next week. We're excited about it. We got one more pod to go before all the action begins, and we look forward to it. So we just want to, remind everybody that you have been listening to Inside the Birds. This is the leading podcast in Eagles intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.